right away.
I mean, they had very little left. They had very little to start off with.
Started off with.
Oh yeah. And so by the final assault, so we're thinking they're probably a little bit about 4:30, if not before. They've exhausted almost all of
So
them.
they retreated.
They retreated.
They couldn't take ammunition off the boat.
They took them off their own day.
Yeah.
Certainly from their own day.
They couldn't take them off their boat.
From the British, because the British dead are all, they don't have to expose themselves to fire. Right. So good afternoon, folks. I want to welcome you to the Bunker Hill Monument. I'm Ranger Patrick. I got Ranger Chris over here. We are National Park Rangers, but you can tell we are dressed a little bit differently today. We are not in the traditional green and gray like Veronica over here. We are dressed as many of the colonists would have been back on 17 June 1775. And honestly, despite the fact I'm wearing 4 layers, I'm probably more comfortable in this than the wool polyester blend of the National Park Service. But be that as it may, I want to welcome you to this battlefield. And you look around, you're going to see people sunbathing, people with kids, people with dogs. And that's fine. But this isn't just a little municipal park. This is a battlefield, what's left of it anyway, where the climax of the fighting would have occurred 17 June 1775. The battle that became known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, one of the most important battles fought in American history. This battlefield is as important as Yorktown, Gettysburg, or the beaches of Normandy in terms of what it meant to what became this nation. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the nitty-gritty about what happened here. The Rangers inside, Rangers like Veronica, they can tell you all about that. Instead, today we're going to focus on the individuals. We're going to look at the small picture. What led men on either side of this battlefield to arrive at this spot carrying this weapon and use it in battle? What was motivating them? What were they fighting for? What were they fighting against? I'll tell you one thing they weren't fighting for. It wasn't fighting to create a separate country. This battle was fought a whole year before the Declaration of Independence. Independence is not what these colonists are fighting for. They're fighting to maintain their autonomy within the British Empire, but not to separate themselves yet from it. Now, one of those individuals probably closest to myself in terms of how he was attired, his name was Peter Brown. And Peter Brown is rather important because he actually was a very good and dutiful son. He wrote his mother. So we have a primary source document based on this battle. Few other battles are as clouded in mythology as this one. It's hard to know here in some cases what really happened, in part due to the chaos and confusion that was rampant here. But this letter gives us a good idea about Peter Brown, who he was, what he was fighting for. At this battle, he was 22 years old, so he has a lot in common with, I'm going to say, the makeup of any army in any century, any generation. Armies are primarily composed of young men. He's being swept up in these currents of history. He has become radicalized in the political events of Boston. Now, he lived outside of Boston, about 20 miles to our west, the town of Westford. But he's grown up being influenced by the Boston Massacre in 1770, the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Like many columnists here, he is blaming the political issues of New England on British Parliament, not the king. At this point, they do not have a big problem with a monarchy. It's with British Parliament. In fact, he has signed a petition denouncing parliamentary actions here in New England. Now, because of the Boston Tea Party, Boston has become a city under military occupation. Also, the port of Boston has been closed until restitution is paid for that destroyed tea. Well, then, as it is now, Boston is the economic engine of New England. If there's no trade, there are no jobs. And the economy, which has been stagnating for a decade, seems on the verge of collapse. And that will impact individuals like Peter Brown, who is working as an itinerant farmer at this time. By virtue of being 22, legally, he has been able to vote for 1 year. The age requirement throughout much of New England was the biggest caveat to voting, because the average age in Boston is roughly 16 years old at the beginning of this war, which perhaps explains why Boston was so prone to violence and radicalization, primarily a bunch of underemployed teenagers. 22 years old, been able to vote for a year, but he can't vote. He doesn't have enough taxable property. Taxable property can mean many things, not just land. But that will allow you to vote in town affairs. And towns throughout all of Massachusetts do not have mayors. Boston back then did not have a mayor. It's run by town meeting, by the franchise voters. But you need to meet that age limit and have that taxable goods. But if the economy is bad, you cannot accumulate enough material wealth that might allow you to vote. So Peter Brown is still essentially a child in his own community. He's not a fully fledged, upstanding member of his town. He can't vote. But he has decided to join what's being called the Army of New England or the Army of Massachusetts. So he does have militia experience. From the age of 16 on, law would have impelled him to train at least 3 times a year with his town's militia. So he will be familiar with this weapon before the battle